And now we're in this awful era of conditioning audiences and readers to expect journalists to cheerlead like partisan hacks for one candidate or the other. And if you don't do it, if you don't engage in it, they get mad at you. This is the most brain dead argument I have heard on MSNBC, and that is saying something, because there are a lot of brain dead arguments made on MSNBC. But we're about to hear more. So Joe Scarborough argues that journalists who are trying to be objective actually end up helping Trump. So maybe don't be objective.
Ana Kasparian just lit up MSNBC, and it wasn't pretty. She went straight for the jugular, calling out hosts like Joe Scarborough for their over-the-top obsession with Trump. It was raw, fiery, and impossible to ignore. If you love political takedowns that cut through the fluff and hit hard, you're gonna want to stick around for this one.
Well, then journalists should hide information about Kamala Harris from you, so you don't vote for Trump and definitely vote for Kamala Harris. In other words, they want the media to manipulate you and do the exact opposite of journalism.
Kasparian came out swinging with a jaw-dropping claim. The big networks weren't just favoring Kamala Harris. They were protecting her like she was untouchable. Flaws, mistakes, they got buried under sugar-coated praise. Meanwhile, Trump's every slip-up was blown up into a full-blown scandal. She said this wasn't bad reporting. It was a calculated move to shape public opinion and steer voters toward Harris. In her eyes, this wasn't journalism. It was straight-up political manipulation.
Doesn't fearmonger about Trump enough? Has he considered that maybe, just maybe, the media had been fearmongering about Trump so much, so often, that Americans have become desensitized to it? Has he considered that? Has he considered the fact that Joe Biden ran his campaign almost entirely on Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, and it wasn't working? Why do you think it wasn't working? This is the most brain dead argument I have heard on MSNBC.
Kasparian tore into Joe Scarborough's take that Trump only won because the media didn't warn people enough. Seriously, she laughed at the idea, pointing out that for years the press called Trump everything from a fascist to the next Hitler, plastering him as democracy's ultimate enemy. They threw every villain label in the book at him, nonstop, and yet voters still weren't convinced.
Something, because there are a lot of brain dead arguments made on MSNBC. But we're about to hear more. So Joe Scarborough argues that journalists who are trying to be objective actually end up helping Trump. So maybe don't be objective. Let's watch.
Even Arlington, you've seen major newspaper outlets talk about, well, how will this impact Kamala Harris and the issue of Afghanistan after he goes? And he
does a thumbs up and pictures.
Well, and just acts like a brute and desecrates Arlington. That's not a time to say, well, how does it, it's. But again, we see it time and time again. For some reason, the mainstream media. What are we, 9 years in to Donald Trump's era in American politics, still doesn't know how to cover Donald Trump. Their objectivity actually is not objective at all. It ends up playing to Donald Trump's advantage.
And then came the moment that said it all. Joe Scarborough on live TV basically confessing the media had no idea how to deal with Trump. His gripe? They didn't spin hard enough. He even suggested Trump's Arlington appearance should have been blown up into a massive scandal, dissected until it dripped with manufactured outrage. For Kasparian, this was the smoking gun, proof that in corporate media's playbook, truth takes a back seat to controlling the narrative.
Be objective because it plays to Donald Trump's advantage? Why? Because journalists want to answer a question about how Kamala Harris would handle Afghanistan, what her views on Afghanistan happen to be. Do the American voters have the right to know where Kamala Harris stands on those issues? Or should we be kept in the dark because Trump bad? Trump bad. That's what Joe Scarborough wants. He wants journalists to line up and say in unison over and over again, Trump bad, because that's been real effective.
And that's why, in all those years before the election, you never heard the legacy media say a single good thing about Trump. It wasn't just dislike, it was a full-on, united front against a man who refused to play by their rules. He was blunt, unpredictable, and totally unbothered by political correctness. No fake smiles, no scripted love for everyone, no bowing to the establishment. He called things as he saw them, and it scared the media, not because he was lying, but because he was exposing how rigged their game really was.
To be a cheerleader for one side. That's great. Go be a cheerleader for one side. But don't sit there on your boring ass morning show where you try to gaslight the American public about Biden's mental health and pass judgment on people who are trying to get Kamala Harris to answer questions on something amazing, policy, where she stands on policy. Because there are voters out there, believe it or not, who aren't partisan hacks. Those are the individuals who actually end up deciding elections. And they want to know where Kamala Harris stands on policy.
I was yelling from the rooftops about Biden's obvious decline, but voices like Scarborough mocked us, called us paranoid, and swore he was sharper than ever. Question it. You are instantly labeled a conspiracy nut. Then reality hit hard, and they had to swallow a massive slice of humble pie. You'd think that humiliation would teach them to be honest about their candidates. But no, with Kamala Harris, they've doubled down, zero criticism allowed, and anyone daring to ask real questions gets painted as the enemy.
Cover the man for how dangerous he is. I don't know what country I'm living in, but I feel like we get wall-to-wall coverage about Trump being a danger to this country. It is incessant. It is all they talk about on MSNBC. Did he just suggest that journalists shouldn't report on Kamala Harris changing her mind on fracking? Is that not an important policy that voters should be informed about? And also, is he under the impression that telling Americans the truth about where Kamala Harris stands on the issues automatically means that Donald Trump is going to win the election?
Here's the shocking truth. If the media had shown Kamala Harris as she really was, she wouldn't have had a shot at the election. Case in point, her 60 Minutes interview. Her answers were all over the place, full of confusing tangents. Airing it raw, political suicide. So the producers did some serious editing magic, making her look calm, confident, and in control. What viewers saw wasn't reality. It was a polished illusion, built to protect their chosen candidate and keep her chances alive.
See, this is when I started my career, when I started working at TYT back in 2007, there really wasn't like left-wing media. There was like Fox News, and the right-wing media infrastructure was kind of being built. And I prided myself and the left wing on the fact that we didn't try to manipulate audiences, and we didn't try to lie to people or cover up the truth about our preferred candidates or preferred politicians. We didn't want to stoop low and do what the right wing was doing with their misinformation, with the fact that they would omit incredibly relevant, important parts of the story in order to make Republicans look good and Democrats look bad.
She used to be a key player in the political machine that tore into Republicans, feeling morally untouchable while lecturing the GOP. But now the tables have turned. Her own side is playing the same dirty game, and suddenly her high horse has collapsed under its own hypocrisy. She once cheered attacks on a biased media, but now that the press is on her team, she's struggling to accept the reality that no longer fits the story she built her career on. For someone who thrived in that echo chamber, it's a harsh wake-up call.
We're in this awful era of conditioning audiences and readers to expect journalists to cheerlead like partisan hacks for one candidate or the other. And if you don't do it, if you don't engage in it, they get mad at you.
Ana's own side turned on her, not for lying or spreading fake news, but for daring to speak the truth, pointing out how the left had media cheerleaders like Joe Scarborough hyping Kamala Harris nonstop while ignoring every stumble or misstep. The DNC's downfall. Simple, nobody knew what Harris actually stood for. Her policies were nearly invisible, her platform vague, and every chance to clearly share her vision was wasted on rambling word salads full of buzzwords and empty platitudes. Voters don't follow confusion, they follow conviction. Kasparian's takedown exposed the harsh reality. Mainstream media shields favorites, vilifies opponents, and silences dissent. The DNC's loss wasn't just about policy. It was credibility, trust, and the refusal to face reality. When truth is buried, journalists become cheerleaders, candidates speak in riddles, and voters eventually push back. And in this election, that pushback was deafening.
You're supposed to be my cheerleader. You're supposed to cheerlead for my preferred candidate. What are you doing? How dare you talk about Kamala Harris and how she went from being against fracking to now saying she's totally in favor of fracking? How dare you?
One of the biggest